I think let's get going. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's really good to see you, and thank you very much for coming along. I'm Stephen Pinfield. I'm chairing for today, and I'm based at the University of Sheffield and also a senior research fellow at RoRI. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this event. We are recording this event, and we'll be recording only the speakers of the presentations. We won't be recording the discussion, and the idea behind that is that it allows people to ask questions, to maybe say things that are reasonably frank without that being held against them, as it were. So please do bear that in mind, and also bear in mind that these fora, we normally follow what are sometimes called Chatham House rules. That is, everybody is able to use the learning from these presentations and able to repeat comments that came out, but not to attribute them. So once again, people are able to say things that are shared and not necessarily will rebound against them. So please do bear that in mind. And that's normally been a successful formula for these kinds of discussions, because this is a real opportunity to exchange experiences and to learn from each other. That's the idea of today's session. Just to give you a little bit of context before we get going, the session is part of the activities of the Research on Research Institute, and RoRI aims to carry out research which is directly applicable to practice and policy. And that's reflected in the impact report that we produced from the last few years of our work that is now available. That describes some of the wide variety of different ways in which RoRI has been working with the research community since 2019. And this particular forum is linked to the AFIRE project. AFIRE is one of a number of different projects within the RoRI portfolio, which is looking in particular at encouraging experimentation in the funder community. So it's aiming to raise awareness about key issues that would merit further investigation in this area, to allow people to communicate what the drivers might be for those kinds of innovations and experimentation, to help build capacity in relation to carrying out experiments, and then to think about how innovation can be scaled and its reach widened in the community. And all of this looking at the culture within the funder community, particularly encouraging experimental work. And so we hope that this forum today will work towards that end in relation to our topic of distributed peer review. By experiment, these could take a number of different forms that are being discussed and in some cases carried out as part of RoRI activities. We want to be able to set up experiments in a way that particularly identifies causation. So in other words, if we change this, what it leads to, what are the consequences of certain changes, and being able to provide evidence and documentation on those. And those could be set up in various different formalized ways. We are, wherever possible, using the approach of planning to the extent that we can announce in advance the kinds of things that we're looking at in order to then test the hypotheses that were developed. Although the research that's being done does also have key exploratory elements to it as well. And in all of these cases, the idea is that there is a commitment to share the results, positive and negative, as it were, with the community so that people can learn from each other's experiences. So those have been the principles that have underpinned a lot of this work. And that's been reflected in the AFIRE project, which has run a number of different sub-project or other strands of activity. This forum is one of them that provides an opportunity for funders to share experiences. There's also been various different activities that have focused on capacity building, in particular encouraging the development of expertise in certain areas, like, for example, capacity building sprints that we've carried out relating to AI and machine learning. And there are also more formalized projects associated with distributed peer review or partial randomization, as well as others that have been set up within the AFIRE project. So I hope that gives you some kind of background in terms of the work of RoRI in general, but also AFIRE more specifically. Now, this forum today is part of a series that we've been carrying out since 2024, and you can see the various different fora that we've held over that time, and a wide variety of different topics. Those are available as recordings if those they're of interest to you, so please do have a look at them. And today's forum is part of the current program that for 2026. We've already looked at AI in the funding community, today's session on distributed peer review, and then there will be other fora in the autumn and winter looking at desk rejection in October and lottery first methods in December. So that's the context for the fora taking place this year. And please do register to attend those fora. I'd be really interested in your experience, or if you don't have experience in these areas but just want to come along and hear about other people's experience, you're also most welcome. So please do sign up. So today's forum, looking at distributed peer review, we're going to be hearing from 4 different speakers about their experience of DPR. I'm going to ask each of these speakers to talk for between 5 and 10 minutes about their experience, and then we'll engage in discussion amongst the panel, but we'll also open up to your questions. And I'd encourage you, as they're talking, to put questions or comments in the chat so we can build up a bank of things to talk about. So please do that from the word go. It would be really interesting to identify what questions you have. I'm going to run each of the sessions sequentially, more or less immediately after each other. I will allow a bit of time in between, though, for clarifying questions, if there's any particular detail you want to clarify after a particular speaker. But most of the discussion will be left until after everybody has presented. And we've asked people to present, not necessarily in a highly formalized way, but really just to share their experience and talk about the issues that led them to think about DPR and what experience they have of it. And I hope the variety of experiences coming at this will be useful in its own right. So I'll introduce the different speakers in turn, but first of all, we're going to welcome Jessica Biddinger from the American Heart Association. And Jessica, if I stop sharing now, can I ask you to begin our discussion and hand over to you, please? Thanks very much. Thank you very much for coming, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm happy to join. I'm Jessica Biddinger. I'm a National Senior Director of Research Operations with the American Heart Association. If you give me 1 second, I will share my screen and begin my very brief presentation. All right. I wanted to give a little bit of background, just how we arrived at piloting distributed peer review. So the American Heart Association, we are now starting our 102nd year as a nonprofit. And the focus of the research we fund is to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. And as we move into our 2nd century of work, we are advancing health and hope for everyone, everywhere. Research is the foundation of our work. The American Heart Association is the largest not-for-profit funder of cardiovascular and cerebrovascular research outside of our federal government. Since 1949, we've funded more than $6.1 billion in research. We currently support an average of 2,200 active awards, reflecting nearly $600 million in research commitments. And we typically receive between 5,000 5,000 and 6,000 research proposals per year, and we work with nearly 3,000 science volunteers with respect to peer review. So just to give you that context, we came across distributed peer review in the summer and fall of 2021, and we piloted it first on a mechanism that was looking at long COVID. So in October of 2021, we approached our board of directors. They allocated $10 million to study mechanisms that underlie cardiovascular and cerebrovascular effects of long COVID. We published the RFP in December with a deadline in February, and we did our first round of distributed peer review over February through March, and awards began April 1st. So again, the emphasis here was just the very quick turnaround time. We typically have a portfolio between 12 and 20 programs per year. Each one takes approximately 6 months from start to finish. So we were charged with definitely decreasing that time. We wanted to get the dollars to the researchers faster, but we still wanted to ensure that the science was rigorous and validated. So that's when we decided to pilot distributed peer review. Again, we were very clear when we explained it to our board of directors and when we published the RFP, that again, it is not traditional peer review, but it relies on the same principles, academic integrity, rigor, transparency, obviously a desire to advance the best science, and it does speed the process up considerably. And again, we were very clear what the expectations were for applicants, both as an applicant and as a reviewer. For the first pilot, we received 109 proposals. Again, we use the National Institutes of Health score scale 1 through 9. We did not require written critiques. We did conduct an administrative review, specifically to make sure that some criteria that we had asked the individuals to address were addressed. We did hold an executive peer review with our research committee, and we did fund 11 proposals for $10.76 million. Our funding recommendations took into consideration a number of different pieces of data, the original score and rank, the truncated mean, how each applicant scored their assigned proposals, so the range, and adherence to program requirements. We surveyed all of the applicants. These were the survey questions that we asked. We always survey our applicants and our peer reviewers and collect that feedback for any program. So again, just wanted to share that, we did survey them. We continue to survey them when we utilize anything, and especially distributed peer review. And we did find that more individuals were in favor of this approach than opposed. Again, you can see that it was very clear. We did hold informational webinars. We had some participation. Again, satisfaction, more individuals were satisfied with the process than were dissatisfied. And we have since competed programs with distributed peer review. We've run 5 iterations. So we've done 5 programs from start to finish with distributed peer review on various topics, including implementation science, AI, and we recently hosted a Rapid Impact Research Award, which had 3 different science topic areas. When we do utilize distributed peer review, we do always have a specific topic that we ask the individuals to address. So I have plenty more information to share, but happy to pause, answer questions. That was very high level. Happy to go into a lot more detail. We have a lot of information, but I just wanted to give you an overview of sort of how we landed there and where we started.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. That's been a real whistle-stop tour, but really useful. So thank you for that. Are there any clarifying questions anybody might have? I'm looking at the chat now if you have them, or if you can raise your hand. Not seeing anything coming in immediately. So I've got a number of questions, but I'll save them until we enter into the discussion. Oh, Ilana, you've got a question.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the presentation. My question is about, maybe I just misunderstood, just wanted to ask whether the fact that no reviews were shared, only the scores, whether it did not impact the applicants, and whether they didn't mind that they didn't receive any feedback that is going to help them improve the application for next round, or maybe because it was a very specific topic and there was a no relaunch, it was not as important. I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, that is a great question. And so we made a couple of tweaks. You're absolutely correct. We were clear for this first iteration that it would be scoring only and that no feedback would be provided. Again, under the auspices, this was a pilot and also a one-time offering. So we were clear about that up front, but we did see in the survey, the majority of the comments wanted to have feedback. They wanted to provide written critiques and they wanted to receive the critiques. So since then, for the next 4 iterations, we have required critiques and we have shared them back with the applicants. Again, with the caveat that they are one-off programs. We don't have any programs that we offer on a regular basis that utilize distributed peer review, but we recognize that the feedback is helpful regardless. So since then, we do provide written feedback. The critiques are released to the applicants.
Great. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead, Alana. Yeah, sure.
So the other question that I have is a little bit more about the specifics of this distributed peer review. So in terms of the reviewers, so all those reviewers were also applicants?
That is correct. So all of the applicants are required to be peer reviewers. We ask them to affirm that in a number of different ways in our grants management system, so there are no surprises. They also have to register as a peer reviewer at the time of the proposal submission. So we collect all of that information so that when they submit, we automatically have it, so we can easily match applicants to the other applicants / peer reviewers. But yes, each applicant is required to be a peer reviewer within the program.
And there is no official meetings. Everything is done at home?
That is correct. Yes, okay. It's asynchronous. So they're submitting their scores and their critiques, and we do not hold a peer review meeting. If we have questions, we bring in, after everything is complete, we bring in science volunteers to look at our analysis, but we don't have a dedicated peer review meeting or peer review panel.
Okay. And I guess what we're doing now is discussing some of the different flavors that the DPR might have, isn't it? Because all of those questions, which are very pertinent, relate to different decisions that the designers of processes have to make in how they're going to implement DPR. And so I'll be interested to see how that emerges from other presentations. But yeah, I think built into this is all, or at least some of the applicants have to also be reviewers. That's part of the process, but precisely how that's designed is an interesting question. So let's move on, shall we now? Thank you very much once again, Jessica and Alana, for that. That's really helpful. And I've just noticed a question from Frederick, which is an interesting issue about conflicts of interest. So let's kind of think about that one as we go through, because there are some important questions there that need addressing in this whole area. But let's move on now to invite Svenja Vandertol to talk about the NWO experience. Svenja, thank you very much for coming along. Can I hand over to you now, please?
Yeah, thank you for the invite. I'm going to share my slides with you. Our variety is indeed a bit different than what we've discussed before, so it will be interesting to see the differences that we have. I am trying to find my screen, which worked perfectly before, but does not seem to want to work now, but there it is. So the distributed peer review at NWO, we have, first of all,
a short... see your edit screen at the moment, Svenja.
The edit screen?
Yeah, we're not seeing the presentation view.
Oh, I'm going to try again. My apologies. There's always some technical kinks, right, with these presentations.
Sure.
I'm gonna try once more. Does it work right now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes,
Let's go.
Excellent.
So my name is Svenja Vandertol. I work for the NWO, which is the Dutch Research Council. And for those of you who are not aware, with the Dutch Research Council, we are based in the Netherlands, and there are 3 domains: the applied and engineering sciences, science, and then the social sciences and humanities, SSH, which is the domain that I work for. We also have groups focusing on thematic programs. There is a kind of sister organization, Zonneweg, which focuses on medical sciences, which is a separate organization, but we do work closely together. And then there are also quite a number of national research institutes. So that's the background of where we come from. And the main task that we do is to fund research in a wide variety of programs. And more of those are using distributed peer review. So I will mostly be talking about the Open Competition XS, as we call it, because that's what I work for and I know most of. But I did want to address also some of the other programs that we have. So the first program we had was the science domain that started the Open Competition XS in 2019. First with a pilot round, similar to what Jessica described, and since then it's been a yearly running program. And then in 2022, the domain that I work for did their own pilot with a evaluation within the field and also within our organization, and also decided to continue to do the program. This year, we also had the Dutch National Education Institute do their own version with the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. There is a Sustainable Science Fund that has a peer review, but also a backup option within the program if they did not receive a certain amount of applications. There's the Open Science Fund, and in general, it is a growing method within NWO programs. So as I mentioned, I will mostly be explaining the Open Competition XS. The aim of this program is to fund fundamental curiosity-driven research based on promising ideas in small, innovative projects. They can be groundbreaking, high risk, high gain, and pioneering. There are always 3 deadlines a year, and they're kind of spread, so it's often January, April, and September. And the requirement to apply is that you have to have completed your PhD, and you have to have a salaried position for the project duration. So it doesn't have to be a fixed contract as long as you have a contract for your project period. You can request budget up to 50,000 euros. So as I said, it's really small, innovative projects. And there is a maximum duration of 1 year if you're applying to the science domain, and 2 years if you're applying to the SSH domain. The procedure as an applicant is really very quick. So it's 2 to 3 months from the application deadline until you receive your result. The budget per round differs per domain. The science domain has about 2.8 million a round, and the SSH has around 4 million a round. So that's about 80 people that can get granted in every round. We receive on average 200 to 500 applications per round. The science domain tends to have a bit more applications because they also allow people to apply again within the same year, and they have a bit less strict requirements than we have, although we've also made them more flexible quite recently. And on a yearly basis, that is about 500 to 1,500 applications a year. And how it works, the slides don't work. Now they do. We do anonymous project proposals. So it's only 4 pages. That is, the application is also shared with the peers. It consists of your title, a short summary, a budget table, and a budget justification, both of which are basically a copied summary of the budget form. A project proposal, so that's really the research plan that you're going to be doing, and 1 page of literature references. Then there is a separate budget form that we do not share with fellow applicants because it contains name and other revealing data, but we do need the project control department to make sure that all of the budget requests are allowed. And then lastly, we have an information form that we use for our internal purposes that we can ask for data to reach people at, and they also have to confirm, for instance, that they're going to be assessing and that they will abide by the rules, basically. So that form is also not shared with the applicants. They have to choose a panel that they wish to be assessed in, and those are groups of the disciplines of the social sciences and humanities, or the science disciplines. And then each panel is divided into 2 groups that divide each other. And those groups are divided based on possible conflicts of interest, which is a topic we will also get back to during the Q&A. Different to the previous program is that we don't ask them to give a score, but we ask them to rank. So they receive 10 proposals and they assign each of them a rank from 1 to 10. They are not allowed to provide the same rank to 2 applications. So every proposal you get has a unique rank, and you're asked to provide a short motivation of 50 words per assessment aspect. We have 2 of those. They slightly differ per domain, but both relate to, first of all, innovation, whether or not it's high risk, high gain, and second of all, the research plan and the feasibility. There is no opportunity for a rebuttal. So what we do once we receive all of the assessments from everyone and we've checked them to make sure that they meet the requirements, we make a final ranking, which is again a trimmed average ranking. So we remove one of the highest and one of the lowest scores. And then the motivation report with all of the given rankings and assessments per assessor is sent to the applicants. Then for the last slide that I have, some of the benefits. First of all, it's a very easy and quick procedure, both for us, but also for applicants. And applicants appreciate seeing other applications, learning from other applications, often also just curiosity, finding it nice to know what other people are doing, and also the ability to receive a lot of direct feedback and that the results are shared fast, because we also have some programs that may take up to a year from deadline till result, and for us it's really 2 to 3 months and you're good to go. It's also efficient procedure for NWO employees. It still takes time to check things, but it's a lot less work than most of the other programs we have. What we also appreciate is that the workload is with the applicant, because you are the assessor. So if you apply, we do not need to ask external reviewers or researchers to be a committee member and invest their time, but you as applicant also invest your time to be writing those reviews. And this is the last part, is not really part of the distributed peer review necessarily, but an element of the XS is that you're able to request funding for out-of-the-box research. So the crazier, the better. It's often also used for programs that cannot get funding elsewhere because they're too out of the box. Then some of the downsides, the first of which is very specific to NWO. We have organization-wide grant rules, which do not currently allow for the procedure that we have. So we have to stick to the 50,000 euro because the grant rules start applying after 50,000 euro. So there is the possibility to request an exception. It's also possible that these grant rules might be changing. We did get exception for a larger program, of which 2 of my colleagues are here. So it is something we are investigating, but right now that's a very practical limitation. That is really only a small budget amount. There is a broad audience assessing, so we don't have expert assessors. You may have someone in your group that really knows a lot about your proposal, but they're not assigned based on knowledge. And we do alert applicants to that as well. There are, of course, potential consequences of AI. We do tell applicants not to upload any documents in generative AI systems for assessment purposes, but it is something we are working on. And the last downside that we face is that we currently cannot use our technical system that we use for the funding procedures, and we are dependent on homemade systems. So the science colleagues have built a lot of useful documents that we can use to take steps in the process that we need, but those are not in the official system yet. That is all I had to share.
Thank you very much indeed. All very interesting. And I guess some of those questions that you raised at the end are generic questions around all proposals, but they may have a particular DPR flavor to them as well, I guess. So let's bear those in mind as we go through. Are there any clarifying questions that people may want to ask? Yeah, Ken.
Thanks, Svenja. Can I just ask, are the people who apply to this roughly at the same career stage, or is it a range from early career through to more senior?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first few years, we had a limitation of 5 till 10 years after promotion. So that guaranteed a pretty similar group. Last year, we've made it more flexible and allowed anyone from 5 years after promotion. And we are currently looking at completely opening it up to anyone with a PhD. We did look after we first made the requirements more flexible if that changed. So do we notice that certain professors, for example, are given the funding above others, but that did not really impact. I think it helps that we have the anonymous application. So they're not allowed to mention their name or in any way indicate who they are. So it does not seem to have a negative impact on more junior researchers. So right now it can be anyone. It is a rather small fund. So in general, I think the group is more on the 5 till 10 years after promotion group or below 5 years, but of course, innovative IDs are not limited to academic age, so it can be anyone.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And thank you once again for your presentation and for sticking to time. Thanks to both speakers for sticking to time. It's making my job as chair really easy. And Tom, you've got a hard act to follow there from that point of view. So let me hand over now to Tom Stafford. Tom is actually talking about a piece of research which I've been involved in, full transparency, as well. And Tom is talking on behalf of Hannah Denneker from the Volkswagen Foundation. Hannah is on a train at the moment. She's hoping to join us from the train. I'm not sure whether she's here or not, but I know there are other colleagues from the foundation who have joined us. So between us, I'm sure we'll be able to answer your questions. Tom, can I hand over to you? Thanks very much. I can see your slides, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, okay, I'm here. You can see me. Good? You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Really excited to speak about this work. Slightly embarrassed that I'm speaking about the hard work of so many other people. The Volkswagen Foundation decided to trial distributed peer review, and the work that you're about to see is only possible because of that kind of courage and the support of the team led by Hannah at the Volkswagen Foundation, who not only ran the normal funding process, but kind of supported the evaluation on top. And then the kind of scientific component that we were brought in to help with, the kind of Research Institute DPR team reflects work by Anna Butters, Melanie Benson-Marshall, Stephen, who you've heard from today already, and myself as a minor part. So I'm very much presenting a kind of a team effort. So this the Volkswagen Foundation DPR trial was done with a program called Open Up, which is for novel exploratory work. So there's a kind of sympathy with the NWO scheme that was trialed there. And the really interesting thing, which I'm going to kind of come back to today, is that they tried they ran their conventional review process that involved a panel of expert reviewers who discussed projects and then decided on a final 10 to fund, and they ran that in parallel with the distributed peer review component. So applicants to this, when the scheme opened with DPR, had kind of two chances to win, and the foundation agreed to fund applicants who would be awarded funding under either of the two processes. So that obviously makes it very palatable to people who are applying to this scheme. We've done a kind of quantitative and qualitative analysis. A qualitative analysis involving interviews with all the people involved in the process is still ongoing. So I'm probably due to my natural prejudices, going to focus on some of the descriptive statistics and some of the analysis that's more qualitative. But I mean, one of the things that's come through from this is that because we were in at the beginning of this trial of DPR, it allowed us to collect an incredibly rich data set on not just DPR, but kind of reviewing in general. And I think there's all sorts of insights that we're very excited to continue discussing about how review operates in funding evaluation. So just to this schematic kind of shows the two processes, so in parallel. So along the top, there's a 4-stage conventional review process. There's internal shortlisting. The ones that survive, the proposals that survive that go to panelists who provide review scores. A subset of the ones reviewed by panelists are discussed, and then a final 10, ideally, are recommended for funding. Below that is shown the DPR process, and like the other funders we've heard from today, this DPR process forgoes the any rebuttal stage or any opportunity for discussion. The applicants for proposals review. Every applicant reviews 4 or 5 other proposals. Every proposal receives 9 to 10 reviews, and then those are the scores. Contribute to a rank, and then the top ranked 10 proposals are funded. So what you can see on the left in the red bar is that the numbers we've evaluated 2 years now. There are 140 submissions in 2024 and 161 last year. And from each proposal, we get a kind of really rich set of data. So we get the scores they receive from the panelists, the scores they receive from the applicants as reviewers. We get the scores, or the overall scores, and also the funding criteria. And then this is sort of the headline result, which I think is quite a narrow way of looking at the result, which is that in the first year that this was run, and if you remember this, the proposals can be funded under 2 routes. 3 proposals out of the 140 were recommended for funding by both the conventional panel review process and the distributed peer review process. And last year, 1 proposal out of 161 was recommended by both. And so that meant that there were around between 18 and 21 proposals funded in each year, because you only need to be recommended by 1 process to get funding. The interpretation I would push on this is that although there is a difference, there's a divergence in what the final selection is, that is still compatible with there being a modest degree of agreement between the 2 processes. So if you expect each process to be 100% consistent, and you should expect them to be consistent with each other, then this is less than 100% consistency, obviously. 100% consistency would be 10 out of 10 agreement each time. But if you admit that there's any kind of randomness, and that will be particularly play out at the top ends of the scoring distribution, then you can see that you only need to have a modest amount of variation before you get less than 100% agreement, even if both panelists and reviewer applicants are looking for the same things in proposals. So I'm just going to use the remainder of my time, I think, to walk you through this visualization, which will give you a handle on the both the degree of variability in the distributed peer review process, the comparability across the years, and also kind of a flavor of the richness of the data that we can get out of this distributed peer review process. So let's just look at the left graph here. And what you can see on the x-axis is a rank. And so what we've done is we've arranged all the proposals by the ranking that emerges from the distributed peer review process. So on the left, can you see my mouse? No, you can't see my mouse. On the top left is the proposal that is ranked first in DPR. So that it receives the highest, the highest average score from all the applicants as reviewers after trimming. And then what we have done is we have estimated, using the scores that each proposal receives, an uncertainty index. So it's a kind of confidence bound, and that's the size of the bar. And so what you can see is that although the mean, the one on the top left is the highest mean, there's some kind of uncertainty over what would happen if it had received different reviewers. Our best guess of what would have happened if it had received different reviewers in another alternate universe. And then we've colored the bars according to the comparison with the classic process. So if a proposal is funded by both DPR and panel, it's in turquoise, so you can see those three on the left. If it's funded just by DPR, then it's purple, so you can see there's a kind of cluster on the left that are funded by DPR because this is the ranking according to DPR. And then you can see in grey proposals that are not funded, and spread out along the distribution, you can see the panel funded distribution. So there, even on the far right, there is one isolated proposal that was lowly ranked by DPR but was funded by the panel. But actually there's a sort of there's a slight tendency for the panel funded proposals to cluster in the top half, but they are distributed across the full range of ranking according to DPR. Looking from your left to your right, if you followed me in that explanation, you will see a kind of comparability between the outcomes of the two DPR for 2 years. So we see a range of scores. We see more discrimination at the very tails, so the very worst and the very best seem to pull away from this kind of slope where many proposals have very similar mean scores. We can see comparable uncertainty, and also again in 2025, a spread of the proposals that were funded by the independent panel process across the range of the DPR process. One more graph for you. So that is the DPR scoring with the panel process colored on top. So you're seeing the slope is the scores according to DPR, and we've colored the bars according to the outcome of the panel process. You can do the reverse, which is you can arrange the proposals by how far they got in the panel process and color them by the DPR outcome. There's less granularity in that because the panel process tends to either doesn't shortlist but doesn't discuss, or discusses and funds. And that's what's shown in this final plot here. So again, if you look at it the other way around, you can see that on the left this is the panel ranking, the most successful proposals are on the left, and they're obviously yellow because they're recommended by the panel process logically because they're the highest ranked. But you can see DPR, highly recommended for funding by DPR proposals, are also spread across the range of success in the panel process, but with a cluster towards the top half, if you will. So as well as, obviously, I have a deep love of beautiful plots, this flip, I think, emphasizes something important, that we don't know the ground truth on what the optimal way is for selecting the best proposals. So you can look at the DPR process and see how it differs from the panel conventional review process, or you can do it the other way around. So there isn't a seeing that the DPR diverges from the conventional panel review process does not tell you which is better, and that's sort of something we could talk about. And there's various ways into that using the rich data provided by the project's analysis. But I think I'm out of time. I'll leave those conclusions up so you can read them at your leisure. Just to say that what we're doing next is we're very interested in who else is picking up DPR and how they're using it. So it's great to be part of this forum. We've got lots of kind of quite granular analysis about reviewer scoring and reviewing comments, which we're hoping to write up, and that will give us insight not just into DPR, but also kind of how peer reviewing operates as a method of picking the best proposals. And also very happy to hear that the Volkswagen Foundation are trialing DPR with another scheme. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you very much for that. Are there any clarifying questions that anybody might have while we look at the summary slide? Any clarifying questions? Eleanor.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, go ahead.
The European Research Council Executive Agency. might have missed this at the beginning, but how were the applicants distributed by proposals?
This was done by the foundation. Do you mean how was the matching done?
Yes, the matching, indeed, yeah.
I would call upon one of my colleagues in the foundation who is in the audience to speak to that if you wanted the details. See, Robert, I see you've turned your camera on.
Robert.
Yes, I can. So we did the matching based on self-assigned scientific disciplines, and we tried to match the self-assigned scientific disciplines of the proposals to the self-assigned scientific disciplines of the people, and then did this by an optimization method. I used simulated annealing for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's much more precise than the answer I would have given.
Okay, thank you, Robert, and thank you once again, Tom. Let's move on to our final presentation from Sampsa Kaataja from NordForsk now. And then after the presentation, we'll be able to sort of gather up some of the key themes. And so do start entering your questions into the chat so we can use those as a basis for further discussion. Sampsa, welcome to you. Thanks very much for coming along, and over to you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see the presentation.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. So hello, everyone. My name is Sampsa Kaataja. I work for NordForsk. And very briefly, Nordic countries have a long tradition of cooperating with each other, and NordForsk is one of the products of this cooperation. Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Iceland are doing together. And we are this, let's say, Nordic research funding organization, and we operate under the Nordic Council of Ministers. And our task is to provide funding for and facilitate Nordic cooperation. So this Nordic perspective is where we focus. And like any other research funding organization, we try to be an effective facilitator of research collaboration and make impact, and to ensure that the research is of high international quality. These are, of course, quite self-evident, pretty sentences. But what is important for us is this Nordic added value in all our funding, in all our projects and programs. We emphasize that we want to have this Nordic added value, something that is plus to the Nordic countries. That's our aim in our funding. And we work in a close cooperation with the Nordic National Research Councils, Research Council of Finland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and so forth. So what we are, we are Nordic, but at the same time, we are smaller in scale when compared to the big nationals, but at the same time, we are more flexible, I would say. And now we come to today's topic that maybe it wasn't possible, or the big national funders were not willing, or so far haven't been willing to try with the distributed peer review in the Nordics. Then we come into the picture because we can do it. And this is the first time we are working with the distributed peer review, and it's this Nordic call for exploratory networks within humanities and social sciences, so-called NOS-HS call. And this call is destined for younger researchers who have from 2 to 7 years since they PhD. So that's one important thing to keep in mind. This is for younger scholars. And this is for researchers working in social sciences and humanities. And what is the feature of this call is that the topic is very broad, because it can be anything from the social sciences and humanities, which complicates things a bit because, well, there is no focus. But still, we decided to use the distributed peer review because this is a network call. In the evaluation, they are asked to focus on the network quality, not on the scientific quality. And that's why we still think that this has been a good option for us, and this distributed peer review works in this call. But like you can see, we are aiming to fund 22 networks, and each network will be funded with approximately 130,000 euros. So the projects are, well, they are not huge. Well, networks are not that big. And in our case, the evaluation is two-phased in a sense that the applicants will do the distributed peer review, and the best of the best from the DPR will be, these applications will be given to the call committee that is formed by this joint committee for Nordic research councils in the humanities and social sciences, so-called NOS-HS committee. And NOS-HS committee won't do another evaluation, but they will, from these best applications, they will see the Nordic added value part and the how well they respond to the scope of the call. So it is kind of a two-stage evaluation, but the second stage, the call committee won't evaluate all proposals again. But then I won't be going into details what it distributed peer review. Just wanted that you see this bullet point next to the last one. So we started to work with the distributed peer review last August, and we had to build our own system, how we are going to do it, how we are going to work with the DPR. And our reference group is very well presented here today. So it's the Dutch Research Council, Volkswagen Stiftung, RoRI, UKRI, and DAM Foundation from the Norway, who have helped us a lot when developing this let's say, NordForsk method. And my dear colleague, Torbjörn Gilbert, he has contacted many of you, and we have had very nice discussions with you that how you have worked with the DPR. And based on those discussions and the materials you have produced, we've made our sort of own version of doing it. But why distributed peer review in NordForsk? So like all the organizations presented here today, we are looking for possibilities for renewal in research assessment, and DPR seemed a really good chance of doing that for us. And at the same time, we had another network call focusing on the natural sciences going on. So now we have this NOS-N network call where the traditional panel review is used, and this NOS-HS network call where the DPR is used. So at the same time, we have these two calls, and we can sort of compare the experiences, the other one using the panel evaluation and the other one the distributed peer review. What we think, we see this clear educational function here. We hope that this method improves the application quality over time, because researchers can see other people's applications and have to evaluate them, and at the same time learn from them. And what is very important for us are these learning effects, that because using distributed peer review, it increases the transparency in application review. In the traditional panel evaluation, the applicants know very little what happens in the evaluation phase. Now they are participating to evaluation in every stage, and so I would like to think that this is a good education for them at the same time to start to understand what evaluation is all about, especially in a call like this where the focus is on younger scholars. And of course, we have had the same questions and concerns that probably everyone has when thinking of using the distributed peer review, risks related to sharing research ideas, reviews giving strategically low scores, lack of assessment skills, and so forth. And this Friday, which is a midsummer here in the Nordics, which is big in Finland and Sweden, we have the deadline for all reviews. So it will be very interesting to see whether these questions and concerns will materialize to some extent. Of course, we've been monitoring closely the reviews we've received already, and there seems to be no problem. The quality is really good, like in any traditional panel work. But then to end with, it may take, from our experience, it may take some time to convince people behind this idea. The original plan was that the project would have been decided by now, but it took some time for us. It took 3 months extra for us to convince this NOS-HS committee that we should use distributed peer review in this call. So that's like one. From our perspective, one thing is that if you have to sell the idea of the distributed peer review to someone, it may take time. Initial skepticism, can it work? Applicants' capabilities to do the evaluation, especially in cases where the focus is on younger scholars, can they do it? To us now it seems that yes, they can do it really well. Our customers, young Nordic researchers, from the beginning, they've been positive towards this idea. Of course, there is always some criticism, quite a bit, well, not quite a bit, but some misunderstanding of the requirements of the distributed peer review, even though we have tried to be explicit, very, very explicit and very informative that what is expected from you when you participate to this call. That it was only, let's say, last Wednesday, I got the last email asking that what do I have to do the evaluation, which was a bit of a surprise because that's something, of course, we've been saying since the beginning that if you participate to this call, you also evaluate. But these are just individual cases, more nuances than true problems or challenges. One very concrete example of the positive sides is that DPR is a practical way to tackle oversubscription. To this call, we expected 100+ applications, but eventually we received 171 applications, if I remember correctly. So in the panel evaluation, I would have been really busy of finding new panel members to do the evaluation. Now there was no such problem. And of course, it has become very evident that this type of evaluation is not applicable to all types of funding calls, but now, in our case, it really seems that for these network calls, it works very, very well. And to end with, this whole distributed peer review process has been a really nice learning process for us, because we've done quite a bit of cooperation with different European funders, and they've helped us a lot. And this has been a good example again that if your organization wants to do something new and there are European colleagues who have done it previously, then be brave and contact them and do things together and ask from them. But I will stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sampsa. Really interesting presentation. And indeed, thanks to all of our speakers who've got the conversation off to a really good start. So thank you very much.